I don't think they have any other option.
Murray on Russell. They clear for him for the three. Rebound, Patty Mills, and the Spurs win it. The Spurs win it.
All right, guys, welcome back to this edition of Timberwolves Talk. Today we have a very special guest with Timberwolves expert Dane Moore. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Expert. I'll take it.
We'll give him that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So we just wanted to, give our viewers a little bit of a background about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your podcast.
Okay. Well, so I've been, I guess from a Timberwolves perspective, I've been covering the team. This is my third year doing it full time. I was doing a little bit of like freelance stuff before, but yeah, I was covering full time as a writer mostly for zone coverage, Minnesota. That all changed up professionally with the pandemic, as a lot of people's lives did. So I was out on my own and wanted to keep trying to do this. So I signed a partnership with Blue Wire Podcasts, and I'm kind of trying to do like the same beat writer things I was doing, but all in podcast form. So it's kind of been an adventure. I miss writing, honestly, to some degree, but it's a lot easier to like fire out volume on podcasts, I feel like. So, we're making the most of it.
For sure. So you do an episode after every single Timberwolves game?
Yeah. So kind of like my thinking is, when you're like writing about the team, you write like gamers after every game, right? And this is the score, this is all that happened. So I'm trying to like repurpose that into, a gamer podcast, but then I would also write like columns or like film breakdowns or stuff like that. So I still try and do like those longer type of things as well. Like that would be more like an hour long episode, but I kind of made those be like my guest episodes. So I'm trying to hold on to the same ideas of like a gamer and a column, but just in audio format, I guess.
For sure. I think it's great to hear especially after we get pretty fired up after the Timberwolves games. Usually they make us like that. So it's good to relax, do a podcast and kind of think a little bit more straight. But yeah, I guess going right into it, what do you think about the San Antonio game?
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring up like the right after the game, sort of emotions versus, like an hour or a couple hours later, you kind of, I think everybody chills out to some extent. And I mean, I don't know, it's different. Like I did grow up in Minnesota. So when I was a kid, like I was a fan of the Timberwolves. So I like have some of that, but I don't view myself like a fan anymore, but anybody who's covering a team, like you're invested in the team, and I don't know. I don't care if they lose, but you kind of want like competence.
Yeah.
And when it's incompetent, that's what's frustrating, and so it's fun. That's happened a lot this year. Right.
Yep.
And so it's funny if I just like slam the mic on right then and there, I could probably just go like off for 30 minutes and get in trouble. But what ends up happening is I go and do like the post game interviews with with Saunders and the players and stuff like that. Then it's like a couple hours later, and I've like actually bullet pointed out what I'm going to say, so I don't say anything too crazy. But it's it was I don't know. What were your guys' emotions in the fourth quarter, and then I'll respond to that.
Well, Chris was like, look what I just said on Twitter, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what did he say? Because
yeah, I mean that was the point. Like I think we all get a little bit too fired up like right after the game, and it is what it is. But I was just a little bit frustrated in that game, obviously, because of the 20-2 run in the fourth. And me personally, I look at the statistics and see the Rubio and D'Lo on the court numbers together with their plus minus, and I get a little frustrated, especially when we go even smaller from Josh. We're already getting out rebounded. So I think that was the most frustrating part, and just the starters I don't think are playing the amount of minutes I would.
Let me cut you off real quick. So I think the question is there, right, by choosing to go with Ricky over Josh to close that game is, you're prioritizing offense over defense.
For sure.
And like, obviously that didn't work, but I understand the idea of prioritizing offense over defense. And that's right. Because basically, right, they needed like 4 or 5 buckets or 4 or 5 stops to close the game. So if you're Saunders, you're thinking, how do I get 4 or 5 of these things? And I think he bet on offense, which makes sense on this team. I think you have more offensive talent, but Rubio being the bet to make
is not a good bet.
Well, I just don't think it works in that situation when it's with D'Lo. Like, I know I'm probably not as low on Rubio as you guys are, but as a 2 guard, I don't think it, like, what are you getting? If you just put Rubio out there, which this would never happen. If you took D'Lo off the floor there and you put Rubio out there for the last 10 possessions and you just ran a really structured offense, like, you would probably get a couple of buckets. Yeah. But if you put him out there and he's at the 2, he can't organize anything. D'Lo's usage rate in clutch time this season is 47%. 47%. That's insane. So literally that means no one else is leading the action right there. So Rubio doesn't make sense if you're taking the offensive path. I'm with you there, but it's not necessarily like Josh was the solution either, or that's where I kind of wrestle with it. I don't think if you leave Josh out there, we're like, all right, we stopped DeRozan. Good. Like,
yeah. See, my solution to that was, and I know we already played a lot of minutes in the 4th because obviously that bench lineup was in a good amount before the starters. So I really like the Jaden McDaniels at the 4 matchup there, and maybe he has a little bit more length to guard DeRozan and provide a little bit more offense than obviously Josh can do. But
he was getting him with the pump fake thing over and over again. That's like Ant and Jaden couldn't. I'm not saying Jaden's a bad defender, but like the DeRozan matchup's unique there, where I don't think any of them were going to be able to guard DeRozan.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
So with the Rubio thing, that's exactly what I'm saying. I feel like the only time you would want Rubio there is if he's the one bringing the ball up the court and running the offense. Otherwise, I feel like he just doesn't provide that much value to the team, and I'd rather have someone else in the game, I guess.
Yeah, who though?
Exactly.
I agree. Like, I agree, but who are you playing? I mean, if Josh wouldn't have been a better offensive option, right?
Yeah, that's just the problem, I guess.
So I mean, I guess you can say Jaden there, and that's like floor spacing. But I get the idea of wanting to close the game when you're trying to get execution with the 30-year-old over the 19-year-old. I think Saunders learned his lessons by the last time they played the Spurs, right? By closing that game with Ant, and that disaster where he didn't, take the layup at the end of the game happened. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I'm totally here, like, all of the Saunders stuff, and there are, and I've nitpicked it on my podcast. There's plenty of things to like this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. But it's what I just said to you. It's like, okay, so this is bad, but what was the alternative?
Exactly.
And the alternative is they're always so limited because there's not good other options like out on the team too. So it's just a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah, and I think I was just gonna say, I think Culver being out was really a big blow that game, especially because I think Culver possibly could have played that role in crunch time.
I was thinking that too. I'm with you. Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that foul, on that, like the hack-a-shack with Pirtle there?
Yeah, that was interesting. We haven't seen that in a while, right? I don't know. Saunders talked about it a little bit after the game, and he referred to Pirtle as a 20% free throw shooter, which I was like, all right, maybe that's like a little much. Maybe he shoot 20% this year. I don't think the odds are that he would, miss both of them. But what he also said is, like, we weren't getting stops. So it's basically just like the idea of, all right, odds are here that Pirtle makes one of these, and the odds that we stop DeRozan are, 25%? So it's 75% chance that he scores a 2, so that's 1.5. Like, I think the math checks out there, not because it's always a good strategy, but it's a good strategy when you're not defending at all, like, which they weren't. They were just going to give the ball to DeRozan, and it was probably going to be him getting 2 points or kicking out to somebody for an open 3. I think that's just what was going to happen.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh gosh. Okay. We're not used to doing this.
It's different. You got to pass the baton.
It's tough with the 2 people for sure.
But what I was going to say is, like, when I saw him do that, I was like, wow, like, we're actually getting some like good coach like that. I don't know, that excited me at least. But if we would have just got the rebound, it would have looked a little bit better.
There have been more things like that too. I think it all depends on what like lens you look at it through, right? And that's why I try and like stay in the middle. I try and see the things that Ryan's doing wrong, and I try and see the things that Ryan's doing right. And just when I've like texted some other like coaches and scouts and people that I know, like, they'll point out like negative things. But one thing numerous people have pointed out to me is that like they've said Ryan has really good ATOs, and like those have been really effective for this team. So I think it's like, I think it's wrong to say he's completely incompetent as a coach, as seems to be the abiding narrative right now. Does that make him a great coach? No. My personal opinion is I don't know. I mean, probably not, but we haven't got to see him coach like anything but a G League team for pretty much 3 years,
Yeah, and I've like you were saying, I've seen improvements these past few games, even because he's developing too as a coach, just like the players with how young he is.
That's a good point.
It was great to see, because Peyton and I were talking about this. It seems like there's always just like a set in stone rotation every game. Like the starters are going to play this amount of minutes, the bench is going to play this minutes. The platoon rotation is what he's doing right now, and it was nice to see D'Lo running with the twos a little bit, because I really thought he helped them score, and it was nice to see. I think they had some of the twos running with the ones too when D'Lo was resting. So I kind of like mix matching a little bit with that.
It's weird though, like what you sacrifice in there is like, so D'Lo subs out 6 minutes into the quarter, right? And then he subs back in for like the last 2 or 3 minutes of the quarter. And then he's back out at the beginning of the second quarter.
Yeah.
And I would just imagine as a player that would be very disorienting. And so we've asked Ryan about that a lot of times. So what Ryan says, it's because they want to have D'Lo in at the end of quarters, at the end of every quarter for like the bonus, which again is, I think this is one of the examples of like one of those smart things, but like just doing like the most analytically smart thing all the time, sometimes, in my opinion, like neglects to acknowledge the human element of some sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I don't know, if there's a way to like analyze how this whole bonus thing has worked, somebody tell me. But it just feels off, and it leads to this whole thing where D'Lo's minute, the rotation, it leads to the rotation feeling extremely structured. Yeah. And I'm with you there, and that just doesn't feel right. It's and I'm sure you guys watch other NBA teams too. It's not like that with every other team in the NBA, and I think that's something to acknowledge.
Yeah, like I was watching the Jazz a lot after we played them, and their fluidity with like Jordan Clarkson coming in, and obviously they have a little bit more pieces than us at the moment, but Jordan Clarkson's such an X factor when he's able to come into the game. So that, I don't know. Do we have that player? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's probably Malik or D'Lo, but they're also the first and second best players. So that's the difference, Like that's actually a really interesting, question. I think when you talk about it big picture, probably more related to Malik, is like, if this is good in a year or two down the road, is that Jordan Clarkson role what's best for Malik? And like Clarkson still probably plays like 30 minutes a game, So it's not that different than like the 32 Malik's playing right now as a starter. That's exactly. Like the best player. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting one. And just judging by like what I know about Malik or just his body language, I don't know if he would love that. But it's interesting, right? Like, I don't know. I think Malik Beasley like can be awesome, yet might still be best in a role like that where he's leading, he's leading your second unit or something, like very Eric Gordon, like peak Rockets days, something like that. But the Wolves there's a whole lot of other pieces to fill in there, but I think there needs to be more balance between the first and second unit. So you're not just like, oh, crossing my fingers that Ant makes like 6 of his 7 shots this time when he's in with the second, it's just like, they're just so limited.
Yeah, and kind of going off of Malik, I guess, and that is at the end of the game. I don't know if you heard anything from Ryan, but it seemed like that obviously Malik and Ant were having pretty good games, and especially Malik was pretty hot down the stretch. Is there a reason to the average fan, is there a reason it looked like he was playing hero ball for the last 5 or so?
D'Lo?
Yeah.
D'Lo, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that was my takeaway, from just at the end of the game. I was like, oh my God, that was 1 million high pick and rolls for D'Lo.
That's what yeah.
And but this is the problem is, and for anyone, we remember the ends of plays. We don't remember the beginnings of the plays, right?
Yep.
And so if you look, I went back and watched those possessions, and if you look at the beginning of almost every one of those offensive possessions, they're trying to run a double drag. They're trying to run a pin down. They're trying to get elevate Malik up. They're there are actions going on. It wasn't just like, all right, 4 low, Oz come up and screen for D'Lo. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Because that's what it got to with 8 seconds left on the shot clock. So you're right in saying there was hero ball at the end of the shot clock, but it wasn't at other times. And this is the execution problem with the team. You want to get the ball to Malik, right? Yeah. He's your best player right now, and he's having his best game of the season. Well, how do you do that? Well, he's not just a give him the ball and let him clear out and do his thing up top guy. You have to execute actions to get him the ball in those situations.
Sure.
And if you go back and watch it, Naz is not a good screen setter, and in that game he was particularly terrible. So he wasn't able to get Malik any space to come get the ball, and Malik wasn't running. He wasn't executing his part of that play either, coming off of the Naz screens, rub off his shoulder, classic 8th grade basketball stuff. That wasn't happening because he's caught up in the moment, and he's like, yo, I have 25 points. I just need to get the ball. It's not going to happen. That's your result. If if Naz doesn't execute, if Naz doesn't set the screen, if Malik doesn't run off it properly, and D'Lo doesn't deliver him the ball, Malik can't get the ball. That's just how it works. And they were trying to do that poorly. And so it led to a bunch of D'Lo hero ball,
Yeah.
And that's it. It's not like D'Lo hasn't just played pure hero ball at times this season too. That's happened. But if you go and look at it and you just rip through D'Lo's offensive possessions this year, there's so many more of them where he's just shit, nobody did anything. I got to go to the basket.
Exactly.
That's happened a lot too. So it's a system failure. It's a whole top to bottom thing. That's how you become 5-16.
Yeah, I feel D'Lo is one of the most he's just kind of the scapegoat for the team. Besides Saunders, I feel people just love to rip on D'Lo.
Yeah, why do you think that is? I honestly I mean it's just numbers, historical numbers, right?
And then also I think it kind of just plays into the style of play that he has. The shots that he misses, they look like terrible shots, but the thing about D'Lo is those are the types.
That's how he's always been, right? Yeah. It's no, and I mean that's why to some extent D'Lo hasn't always been an efficient player too. Yeah. But it's I don't know, and I like you guys, I had way too much time, this summer, and I watched a ton of Brooklyn games from back in the 2018-19 year, and this is what it looked like too. This is his game. And I know he was an asterisk all-star and all that sort of stuff, but what else do you want him to do? Yeah. He doesn't have explosiveness to get to the rim. So if you put the ball in his hands and setting a screen, what are his options? Pull up from 3, pull up from mid-range, or pass. Maybe what people would like is some more discernment there, right? Picking the best option of those 3 more often. But who's he kicking the ball to? Josh Okogie? Jarrett Culver? What would you do? I don't know. It's it hasn't been good, but that's a lot on what the roster is. It all comes back to that. It's the rest of the roster isn't executing either.
So I don't know what exactly is going through his mind, but if I'm coming off that pick and I got DeJounte Murray on my backside and I see Josh Okogie on the wing, I might just be taking that mid-range shot instead of passing it to him on the wing.
You might look the other way.
And he doesn't think and part of it is he doesn't think the mid-range shot is as bad as most of his detractors do. And his detractors might be right. I think in a lot, to a large extent, they are, generally speaking, right? The mid-range shot is bad. But it also ignores context, that a basketball player would feel. Like, I've asked D'Lo about this before, and I'm just last year I wrote a whole thing on it, and it was like, what value do you see, D'Lo, in the mid-range thing? And for him, it's about being able to knock that down one time so that the next time either the big comes up, right, and you can go past him to the rim, or you have to have somebody chipping in or tagging in or whatever, and then you have something from there. I don't think D'Lo is stupid. And there are some players who shoot a lot of mid-range shots in the league who I would say are just stupid, and it's just like, oh, that's what I've always done. I think he's trying to play 3D chess with it, but part of the problem is that he's just not quite good enough at hitting that mid-range shot right now. And you got to be able to hit that at a high rate for the 3D chess to fall into place. That's why it works for KD. That's why it works for Kawhi. That's why it works for Kyrie. That's why you're fine with those guys taking those, because they're hitting 50+% of those shots. Thus far, D'Lo is not. And basically the hope is that he starts doing that once he's next to Cat. And if not, then it just won't work. It just won't. It's just the offense won't be as good as everyone wants it to be.
Yeah. So what do you see? When is Cat going to be back in your eyes? When do you think?
Oh man, if I had $1 for every time somebody DM'd, emailed, or replied to him, I don't know. We don't know. Like, nobody knows. People in the organization don't know.
Exactly. No one knows.
I mean, you guys have been following the team. Your listeners, I'm sure, have been following the team too. They're not exactly transparent with injury stuff. No. And like, I have pushed back on the injury stuff and wanting to be transparent and pushing on that. It's hard for somebody like me who's there asking the questions, or the other reporters. This feels like a topic that's harder to press on because it is COVID. So for me personally, like, you're asking the questions, but you're not like hammering at it, and yeah, trying to be like, well, what's his viral load? Like, no, it doesn't work like that. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's bizarre. I think it's bizarre the way they generally speaking, try and handle that, because I don't feel like that fits this fan base well. I think maybe if you're in a really big market, right? Like, you have 1 million fans and you just kind of try and stay very surface level because whatever, that'll work. But here you have such a whittled down fan base that the ones that are very dedicated are the ones who are following all this stuff in great detail and are reading what the injury report says. They're reading every one of our tweets. They're listening, they're reading every article, they're doing all this stuff, and they're parsing through, and they're just going, the fans are going, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? And I don't know. I mean, I've obviously never been on the other side of the equation. I'm biased as a media person who would want more transparency, but it's weird. And related to Cat, I don't know. And it is what it is. They're like, he'll be back at some point. It's not like they're trading him. I don't know. Like, I don't know what else people, I mean, what do people want to know? What should I be asking? What questions would you want answered?
See, that's the thing, is like, I think all these, like, just fans with like fan pages and little podcasts kind of like us, and we're like, I think there's just so much speculation that when it gets out, like, everyone's so like, oh, like, Cat's gonna, we got a little 2-day break here, he's gonna come back on this day, and then when he doesn't, everyone gets really mad. And it's there's just so much false information. I saw someone with 10,000 followers say they thought Cat was going to be back for the last game against the Spurs. Like, it's you can't speculate on any
Who
of that.
Who says that?
Yeah, like, exactly. These are just nobodies that have no.
That was not going to be back.
Yeah,
no.
Well, here's okay. So here,
that's where the frustration comes in.
This is what I can answer: is once he is back, whenever that is, and that might have already happened. He's going to need this time to recover in terms of endurance, as Wancho is, right?
Exactly.
As they're saying. So that makes sense. I think that makes sense to all of us. You just had a virus that directly impacts your breathing. You're probably not going to be in very good shape after having that for 3 weeks.
Definitely.
So what I think is weird is it's like, all right, Cat needs to recondition. We all get that. All of us who are approaching this logically get the fact that you have to recondition. We get that with Wancho too. So has that process started? I think that, that's the question, because if it has started, if it started, a week ago, then maybe it's only another week. If it's 2 weeks of I'm just throwing numbers out there. But if that hasn't started yet, and, he's going to miss, it's going to be 3 more games before he even starts being able to recondition. Now we're talking about it's been 3 more weeks that he's out. And that's 12 more games. That's the big difference. And I don't know. We don't have transparency on that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing, because we were talking about Darren Wolfson about that, and he said the exact same thing. So do you think there's a reason that this organization is more non-transparent than others when it comes to injuries?
It's a Houston thing. That's a Houston thing. Back to Darren Moore days. It's they're not breaking the rules. These if people have a problem with the way that the Timberwolves are handling this, legally they're not doing anything wrong. There are HIPAA restrictions in play. There's I looked into all this stuff last year when I was like, what in the world? I thought Cat was day to day. It's been 15 games, and it's one of those situations where things would need to change in the collective bargaining agreement and all that sort of stuff to necessitate more transparency. So it's just the Wolves sliding more on the side of the gradient of, wanting to be, they're not trying to mislead. They're just trying, from the conversations I've had, they don't want to say the last thing they want is to say somebody's going to be back in 2 weeks and then they're actually back in 4 weeks. Because that's what happens with a lot of injuries, right? It is a timetable. And for one reason or other, that's very important to them, is not to set up a date and then for that player not to be able to come back at that time. So they're playing within the rules. If it were me, I would lean a little bit further on the gradient, but I'm a biased media person.
Exactly. Kind of like the Derrick Rose thing, with his ACL, how the fans thought he was going to be back way earlier, but he wanted to sit out the season, Is that kind of they don't want to put pressure on the players to try to make them come back earlier? Is that kind of
exactly? Yeah, exactly. And because you don't want to. That ends up shaping a narrative on the player.
Makes them
they're soft or something like that, and really injury timetables are ambiguous. ACLs, perfect example right there, right? You have guys who can come back and you can come back from an ACL and play high level sports in 5 or 6 months. People do that. In the NBA, we almost always see a minimum of 9 months though. And then some guys need 12 months. It is it's a body to body thing. And it's a how much risk do you want to incur by, because the earlier you come back, even if you're cleared, the more likely you are to re-tear it. So
exactly. And I think kind of going off of injuries, I think lesser problem than Cat's COVID was obviously the wrist, which could be obviously a more serious injury. So do you think he'll still have that wrist brace on after this?
That's a good question. It was more like a cast.
Yeah.
I think
club almost
brace. Yeah. Brace undersells it. I don't know. So now how long has he been out? Well, it was after the second game, which was basically January 1st. So that's now it's been almost 4 or 5 weeks since the wrist injury. I mean, it's like to recover from that without surgery is like 6 to 8 weeks. So I think like right now, if he started playing basketball, he would still need more bracing, on that thing. And who knows, maybe that's part of the reason why they're taking this really slow back with the COVID too. They're just like, all right, wait till you're 100% from COVID, because that will also correspond with the wrist being back to 100%. I don't know that, but if we're looking for reasons why Wancho's name shows up different on the injury report and why he's wearing a jersey on the sidelines when Cat's wearing clothes, like, I think that's a natural, connection to make there. But I don't know specifically if he's going to come back clubbed up or not.
Definitely.
So do you from what I perceive, you go to the home games, right?
Yes, I do. Yep. I go to all the home games.
That's where do you sit and stuff? How's that work?
So it's funny, in the preseason, we were in the upper deck, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do this. What's the point?
Yeah.
But now, okay, rewinding. Normally, the media seats are very good. They're right next to the Wolves bench. Like, it's the last spot on the bench, and then it's my seat.
Yeah.
And so we've been, it's not like that at every stadium. Like, I've covered games in other places, and sometimes you're, up high at different stadiums. So it goes from this really good spot to then in the preseason, we're in the upper deck. And now it's like, it's in the lower bowl, but at half court, and like at the top, like kind of the top of the lower bowl there, which those seats are actually good. It's like, you could see everything well, and then it's so quiet in there, you could hear everything.
Yeah.
Like I'm on the opposite side of the benches, of the player benches, and you can hear anytime anybody elevates their voice. You can hear what they're saying.
So when Malik's screaming like a crazy person, you can hear him.
Well, I'm just so used to that now. That's just like, that's background noise. But it is super funny at the Pelicans game that they won, right? Like, Ricky is lining up for free throws on the left side, which is in front of the Pelicans bench, which is right in front of me. And JJ Redick just starts chirping him from the bench. And he's like, he goes, got to put a little more arc on that, bud. Just line driving that thing. And it's just funny, because that I would never be able to, normally hear when you got don't have a million fans at Wolves games,
No.
but it's just, it feels so much to me like I've covered like high school basketball and like AAU in the past, and it reminds me so much of that, where it's just kind of like the game's going on, and then people are just kind of walking around, like 10, 20 people are just walking around the court. It's so different than a normal NBA game in that way. And they have Lexus cars parked under the hoop for some reason, and guys just like sit on the cars sometimes for like, it's like they're there for promotional reasons. And I don't know. It's all very, very bizarre.
Hey, at least they're getting to play though. That's, I guess, the positive.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm very thankful that I'm able, to be going to the games. It's I guess it's literally something money can't buy, So it is cool, to that extent. And it's been a really unique experience in hearing so much. I mean, I'm saying the joking things, but like, you pick up on a lot of stuff when you're there in person that it isn't caught on the camera, like just from a positioning on the floor standpoint and all those sort of things. So I think it really helps my coverage to be able to be around, even if I'm not in the locker room anymore.
Yeah. And I bet like I would be really interested to hear like the defensive chatter and how like all the switches are working within that, and just all the call outs. Like, I think that'd be really
you miss
cool
Gorgie for that, man. Gorgie was the booming voice. They need that voice back in there, but it's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, looking forward to, I guess, the Thunder game tonight. If there's ever a game to get back on track after a tough loss, I mean, the Thunder have eight players tonight, and they're without probably their three best. I mean, what do you expect?
I was just watching the Thunder game, their last game, which they also played without like Shea and Dort and George Hill, like without all of them, and they beat the Rockets by 20. So it's like this year's weird like that, where the NBA is always weirder than that than you think, where you're like, oh, this team's way better, this team's worse than that team, like they should win. Like it in the regular season, it doesn't always shake out like that. And like if you have 8 guys and they play all the positions, like you should be all right. If 4 of those 8 guys are bigs, now you're in trouble. Like that one Sixers game this year. But like the Thunder have live players. They're not that much worse. Like the guys who are playing aren't that much worse than the Wolves backups. So, or they're maybe better. So I'm certainly not chalking up a win. Put it like that.
I'm just hoping Darius Baisley doesn't drop like 45 on us tonight. And I'll be happy.
Darius Baisley, he's interesting. Kenrich Williams, like I bet you he'll have like 15. Hamidou Diallo is like bad, but he's athletic.
He's fun to play with in 2K.
Yeah, exactly. And this is basically going to be a 2K game, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. And Al Horford is solid. So it's not, they're not playing a G League team. And I don't know. At the same time, like I haven't looked at like the line or anything on the game. But I don't know. Should the Wolves be favored on the road?
Honestly, I don't know if they've made the line yet, but honestly, I could see the Wolves as a betting favorite this game.
What would you guess what the line is? I'm gonna look it up.
Ooh,
oh
gosh,
Wolves minus 2.5.
I'm gonna guess that the Thunder. I'm gonna guess the Thunder are 1-point favorites. But if I can ever get this is really good podcasting right here.
Hey, that's all right.
Oh my god. Okay. Oh no. NBA, Action Network, free sponsorship. Oh, Wolves by 1.
Wow.
Wolves by 1.
That's a rare Wolves favorite.
Rare favorite.
It started at Wolves minus 2.5, and then people have been hammering the Thunder to drop it down to Wolves minus 1.
Gosh.
I mean, hey, maybe I'll have to bet on a Wolves game. I haven't seen us as favorites in a while, so
that isn't the reason to bet on a Wolves because
might
they're
not be a
favored.
good bet.
That is not a reason to bet. I would take that. I would take the Wolves. I'll take the Wolves to win tonight.
At a 1-point favorite, I think I might take them.
Sure, why not? I mean,
I just don't want to be disappointed. That's the only thing, man. Like we're going into the weekend. I don't want to have a tough start to the weekend with this disappointing game. But
you're in the wrong business, then, man.
But you never know. God, yeah.
Well, yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. Like,
no problem.
Great talking to you. Great personality. Everyone, go listen to his podcast. By the way, where can they find it?
On the internet, the Dane Moore NBA podcast. Yeah, I'm doing like 5 or 6 episodes a week. After every game, the next morning, I'll be up there. I recorded a long one with Britt Robson, who writes for The Athletic, a couple days ago, and I did a film review with one of my friends who's a coach of Anthony Edwards this week too. In addition to that wonderful San Antonio game. That's my last one in the feed right now. And then I'll have something after this San Antonio game. So
hopefully it's a positive one. Hopefully we're going to have a very positive podcast coming out. But you never
minus 1, minus 50-50. Coin flip. We'll see.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone watching. And we'll catch you next time.
All right. Peace out, guys.